I well, I think the answer is nuanced. Like, do I believe Biden won? Yes, I believe he won.
And you voted for it.
I did, actually.
Do you regret that?
I mean, man, I wish we could have just a normal human being as president. That's what I want. I think if we could, you know, there's that old saying of like, we're better off being run by people picked at random from the phone book than the faculty of Harvard.
Yeah.
I don't know who said that, but it was someone very wise. And I would say if we could do that for the president, that would be great.
You think that would be beneficial? So you're not, obviously you're not happy with Biden.
Don't we all just want a normal human being to be
whatever
the president?
That means, whatever, you know, I'm not even sure anymore what normal means.
No, but I mean, like, you know, just, I don't know, just a...
You want somebody who's competent.
Yeah,
that's helpful.
Yes, I think definitely somebody's executive ability is underrated. Since the president is effectively the chief executive officer of the country, it actually matters if they are a good executive officer.
Yeah.
Lines like basically hundreds of gigabits of data were saturated. We think we've overcome most of that, and so it's now time to proceed. But as this massive attack illustrates, there's a lot of opposition to people just hearing what President Trump has to say, and but I'm honored to have this conversation. I want to emphasize it's a conversation. And it's really intended to just get a feel for what Donald Trump is just like in a conversation. It's hard to catch a vibe about someone if you just don't hear them talk in a normal way. And when there's an adversarial interview, like no one's themselves in an adversarial interview. So this is really aimed at kind of open-minded, independent voters who. Just trying to make up their mind. So you can understand, like, what is, what is it just like to have a conversation? So honored to, Donald, great to speak. We had a great conversation yesterday. As you mentioned yesterday, if we could just record that conversation and post it, it would have been excellent. And I hope we can have something like that today.
Well, I think we will. I'm pretty sure we will. And congratulations, because I see you broke every record in the book with so many millions of people. And it's an honor. We view that as an honor. And then you do want silencing of certain voices. Usually those are voices that have something to say that are constructive, oftentimes constructive. And so we have to consider it an honor. But congratulations on breaking every record in the book tonight. That's great.
Well, thank you. Well, I mean, maybe we could start off with, the assassination attempt, which was an incredible thing. And I have to say that, your actions after that assassination attempt were inspiring. You, instead of shying away from things, instead of ducking down, you were pumping your fist in the air and saying, fight, fight, fight. And I think that's, the president of the United States represents America, and I think that is America. That is strength under fire, and so that's a big part of the reason why I was excited to endorse you as the president of the United States for having another term here. Is that was just incredibly inspiring. But I mean, what was it like for you?
Not pleasant. I have to be honest. I said there was blood. I had more blood. I didn't know I had that much blood. The doctors later told me that the ear is a place that is a very bloody place if you're going to get hit. But in this case, it was probably the best alternative you could even think about, because it went at the right angle, and it was a hard hit. It was very. I moved down pretty nicely, pretty quickly, and we had bullets flying right over my head after I went down, so I'm glad I went down. The bigger miracle was that I was looking in the exact direction of the shooter, and so it hit. And all because I put down a chart on immigration that showed that the numbers were so great. I love that chart even more
maybe
now.
It's a sign. Maybe that's a sign, you know.
It's an immigration sign.
You highlighted a serious issue, and
Yeah,
at that moment,
that's right.
the bullet missed your, you know, hit your ear, but you know, missed your head. I mean,
Well,
you know,
the amazing thing is that the sign, I said, bring down that sign on immigration. And it's such a sad situation. As you know, we lost somebody that was great, Corey,
Yeah.
who, a firefighter, a great gentleman, a great trumper. He was just a fantastic family and a fantastic man. And a friend of mine came up, Elon, and said, I'd like to give the family some kind of help. And I said, that's great. He said, do you mind? I said, I don't mind at all. And he wrote out a check for $1 million, gave it to the wife. She said, this is really nice, but I'd rather have my husband back, which is a nice thing for somebody to say, to be honest. She's great. The family is great. And we raised a lot of money for them and for two other gentlemen are unbelievable people also. They were hit really badly. They thought they were not going to make it, and they did. The doctors in the Butler area, I tell you, they were incredible. They saved the two, and they were really hit tough, both of them equally. And we thought my first question was, because I heard bullets flying over me, and I said, how many people were killed? Because we had a massive crowd there, a tremendous thousands and thousands of people, and there was no land. I mean, it was all people. So I said, how many people have been killed? Because I knew there were other shots being fired. And they said, we don't know yet, but some people have been badly hurt. I have to give the Secret Service sniper, they call him, or sharpshooter, but sniper, because he didn't know there was a problem. He's an extraordinary shot, obviously, and he didn't know there was a problem. And he was able to pick it all out within 5 seconds. And he used one bullet from very far away, I guess probably about 400 yards. The shooter was 130. But he was on the opposite side of the field and the podium. The smoke and the flame from the gun, immediately recognized it and immediately took a shot. And it was one perfect shot from very far away. And all of a sudden he has to act. And it's a very tough thing to act and to be shooting somebody. They say it was approximately 5 seconds from long range, one bullet. If that didn't happen, because the shooter had a lot of bullets, he had a lot of cartridges up there with him. So could have been brave.
I mean, that's clearly, he was very competent in taking that shot to stop the attempted assassination. I think most people people are wondering how on earth could such a thing happen.
Well, I view it as two ways. There should have been nobody in the roof. There were people, because there were so many tens of thousands of people there. There were people that were seeing him, and there was one woman with a red shirt, Trump all over it, and she's screaming, "That guy's got a gun!" You saw it probably.
How the heck are, basically people wondering by it, pointing out there's a guy on the roof with a gun? And they're seeing it, but somehow it's not being addressed. That does seem crazy.
Well, they're going to learn from this. The communication between the local police, who sort of had an idea, and then ultimately a man lifted himself up to the roof, could barely do it because he was pulling himself up. He fell down, and he did. From what I understand, he did say there's a guy up there with a gun, and the shooting started very quickly after that. I think it forced the shooter to go maybe quicker. He was supposed to be a very good shot. My sons, Don and Eric, they can't believe what happened, but they said from 130 yards, a bad shot would hit that target almost every time. They said it's like in golf, sinking a 2-foot putt.
It's not a tough shot.
It's not a long shot. The Secret Service person had the long shot. He had triple the distance actually. So it was a terrible thing. It's hard. I have to say this about the Secret Service. When I went down, when guns go off, and it does happen in stadiums at a soccer match or some kind of a match, everybody flees. They call it a stampede, like cattle. But everybody, and a lot of people get killed with those stampedes. We had more people than you'd have at, some of these matches or these games. And and it's almost like they wanted to be with me. Well, out front, you had thousands, tens of thousands of people. You, as far as the eye could see, you had people in Butler, and and a lot of press too. There was, you know, many cameras on watching this. It's what makes it so different, because normally things happen that aren't good, but you never have a picture of it. Here we have all these cameras shooting it. He well, he sort of missed. I mean, you know, he he got me, but it could have been could have been a much bigger problem.
Well, it was your. I think your actions in the heat of fire, and you know, like what I found admirable there was that you can't fake bravery under such circumstances. The courage is instinctual, or it is not. It's not a rehearsed action. And so I just want to say that I think a lot of people admire your courage under fire there. And yeah, so
thank you very much. I appreciate it. I didn't think of it. I just wanted to get up, and I wanted to stand up. I wanted to let people know, you know, I felt I was good when they were on top of me, covering me, actually, very much covering me, and very bravely. But I wanted to get up. I said, I want to get up. And they wanted, you know, they have everything there. They wanted stretcher. I didn't like the stretcher. And I knew I was hit in the ear, but I knew I wasn't hit anywhere else. They felt I was hit someplace else because it was such a lot of blood. Was I alive? You really couldn't tell. When I stood up before the hand, before the, you know, the fist in the air, they didn't know if I was alive. Nobody did. And when I put the fist up, they were just relieved and happy and thrilled, and the place went crazy. It was pretty amazing. It was a terrible thing, but it was
incredibly moving. Yeah. Well, and I mean, speaking of the sort of slide that got you to turn, that saved your life, really, was the illegal immigration slide. Maybe this maybe this is worth talking about that.
It was
that slide saved your life.
No, the illegal immigration saved my life. You're right, but it was, I had to be at that exact angle.
I mean, that's a great one.
You had to be exactly at that angle, but the incredible thing is that the chart, I used it less than 20% of the time. That normally you wouldn't use it. Normally I wouldn't have the thing, and then, you know, it would have been a very different story. It's very much, I say, an act of God. It's a miracle that it happened, and I'm honored by it. I'm honored by it.
Well, what were you about to say about illegal immigration before you were rudely interrupted?
Well, I was going to say how good the numbers were. By the way, we're going back to Butler, and we're going to go back in October. We're all set up, and the people are fantastic in Butler. It's a great area. Great. These are incredible people. Elon, the chart was just a chart that in my last week, we had the best illegal immigration numbers, meaning stopping. It was at the lowest. You've seen the chart. It's become quite a famous chart, but that was the lowest point ever recorded. I'll be sleeping with that chart. That chart was very important for a lot of reasons.
Well, I mean, would it be accurate to say that you're supportive of legal immigration, but we also need to shut down illegal immigration, and especially unvetted illegal immigration, because you know, and that's not the same as saying that everyone who's an illegal immigrant is bad. In fact, I think most people who are illegal immigrants are actually good, but you can't tell the difference unless there's a solid vetting of who comes across the border. Does that accurately represent your position?
I say it very simply. They have to come in legally. They have to be checked.
Yeah.
Because look, Kamala was the border czar. Now she's denying it. Everything that I do, she's saying she was strong on the border. We're going to be strong. Well, she doesn't have to say it. She could close it up right now. They could do things right now. It's horrible. No tax on tips, and all of a sudden she's making a speech and there will be no tax on tips. I said that months ago. I believe it's over 20 million people came into our country, many coming from jails, from prisons, from mental institutions, or a bigger version of that is insane asylums, and many are terrorists. And I'll tell you what, they're coming not just from South America, they're coming from Africa, they're coming from all over the world, they're coming from Asia,
Yeah.
They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from countries that are stupidly and horribly bombing Israel October 7th. They're coming from all over the world. And you know, you look at, it's so sad October 7th because it should have never happened.
Yeah.
It's so sad when you look at Ukraine. It should have never happened. We have a defective government. These are defective people, and they're not people that should be running it. But where you see it the best is the border, because you have millions of people coming in a month, and then she gets up and she tries to pretend like she's going to do something. She had 3.5 years. And by the way, they have another 5 months that they can do something, but they won't do anything. It's all talk. She's incompetent and he's incompetent. And frankly, I think that she's more incompetent than he is. And that's saying something because he's not too good.
Yeah, absolutely. Secure elections. And so it's just essential to have a real border, or we can't function as a country, and our service, you know, our central services are being overwhelmed in a lot of cities. But as we were talking about earlier, I think having a legal immigration process that is smooth and efficient and done well, and I, you know, speaking as someone who is a legal immigrant, like in my opinion, actually, I'd say like probably most of the illegal immigrants actually are actually good, hardworking people. That's my opinion. But some are not, and you just have this sort of adverse selection process where, you know, if somebody's you know, bad things, coming here sooner, because it's a piece of cake to go rob you know, houses in LA or New York compared to other parts of the world. And in a lot of places in America, if you try to stop the person who's robbing you, you'll be arrested. So
it's right. I mean, what's happening with crime, and our police are so good, but they're not allowed to do their job. But I have to tell you, Elon, I hate to say it because it's such a downer to say it. I hate to say it. I hate it, but you have a lot of people that just shouldn't be. I think it's a much bigger number than you think. They're allowing, again, they're allowing people from their jails. And if you were running one of these countries where they're coming from, you would have had all of them. As an example, Venezuela, their crime is down 72%. They're taking their drug dealers. They're taking, frankly, their prisoners. They're emptying out their prisons. They're taking their criminals, their murderers, their rapists, and they're delivering them into.
But that's what Castro did.
Yeah, well, he did on a much smaller scale. You know, it was a much smaller scale. But this is a massive scale because this is being done worldwide. But here's what's happening: crime all over the world is down. And wait till you see the numbers that we have. You know, this is migrant crime. This is crime that's going to be. And I saw it today in New York where somebody was knifed, where they raped the girlfriend of a man that stood there watching in New York in one of the shelters, and started pulling out the knives, and bad things happened today. But this is happening every day. These are rough people. These are people that are in jail for murder and all sorts of things. And they're releasing them into our country, and they're telling them, if you come back, we're going to kill you. We're going to give you the death penalty or kill you. So they don't want to come back. But these are rough people. These are criminals that make our criminals look like nice people. Had nothing to do with the problem. But she was the border czar, and people can't allow them to get away with their disinformation campaign. Now she's trying to say that she wasn't really involved, and the whole thing is horrible. She was totally in charge. She could have shut the border down without him. He didn't know what he was doing anyway, so he wouldn't have even known what happened. You could shut the border down. He wouldn't even know the difference.
It's simply not working.
No, it's horrible.
Whether it's a question of intention or competence, either way, we don't have a secure border, and we have people streaming over like it looks like a World War Z zombie apocalypse at times. And you know, sometimes you got to sort of wonder, like, is it real or not? So because you see things, you're like, is it real? So I went to the border at Eagle Pass, and I saw for myself in Texas, and I was like, okay, it's real. I'm like seeing this in real time. I actually posted the video like just live. I just flew there one day and just to see, hey, is this made up or real? And I'm just seeing people stream across the border, and I have to say, you know, at least the people that I saw did not look friendly. You know,
these are
people can look at my video and say, hey,
Yeah.
you know, these people look friendly. I don't look super friendly. So
These are people that Elon would not be the same man if he had to walk across the street and look these people in the eye. These are rough people. These are really rough people coming across. And these are people that we don't want in our country. And, you know, the caravans are coming in and they're putting, and who's doing this are the heads of the countries. And the reason the numbers are much bigger than you would think is they're also taking their non-productive people. Now, these aren't people that will kill you. We have enough of them. But these are people that are non-productive. They are just not productive. I mean, for whatever reason, they're not workers or they don't want to work or whatever. And these countries are getting rid of non-productive people in the caravans in many cases. And I saw an ad by Kamala saying how she is going to provide border security. Where has she been for 3.5 years? For 3.5 years,
yeah, no,
we have 20 million people.
I think is
it's a terrible.
yeah. I think this, frankly, I think this is a fundamental existential issue for the United States. And if we have another 4 more years of open borders, and it's going to be even worse with another 4 more years, it's going to be even worse than it's been for the past 3.5 years. I'm not sure we've got a country.
You don't have a country left. Elon, if they get in, you will have 50 to 60 million people from all over the world, not South America only. You know, we think of South America, we think of Honduras and El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, you know, the 4. But it's not that. It's everywhere. They're coming in from everywhere. And I had to stay in Mexico.
Yeah, I think this is a super important point. Like people, it's like basically when I went down there, I was like, well, where are people from? It's like almost no one was from Mexico.
No, Mexico less.
It's just the border. It's just the border with Mexico. But the people coming in, it's Earth, the rest of Earth, and America is only about 4 or 5% of the population of Earth. It would only take a few percent of the rest of Earth to overwhelm everything in the US.
We're already overwhelmed, Elon. We're overwhelmed. You had to see the news tonight about New York, and I love that place. And what they're doing to it is horrible. What they're doing to it, and all the courts do is they try and focus on Trump. Okay, then let's focus on Trump, who did nothing wrong. I complain about a rigged election, and they don't want to come back. But they won't come back.
Sure.
But they're coming from Africa. They're coming from Asia. They're coming from the Middle East. They're coming from South America.
Well,
they're coming from everywhere.
Earth, basically.
And there are a lot of really bad ones.
It's just an everywhere on Earth thing, and it's just not possible for the United States to absorb everyone from Earth or even a few percent of the rest of Earth. It's just not possible. So,
well, Elon, we're going to have to finish this up. We're going to have the largest deportation in history. I beat Biden. He failed in the debate miserably. And, some people said, oh, gee, it's too bad. It's too bad he did so badly, or I did well in the debate. The first night they said, wow, one of the people at CNN said that was the greatest debate performance I've ever witnessed. And then 2 days later, they didn't talk about that. They just said he was bad. This was a coup of a president of the United States. He didn't want to leave, and they said we can do it the nice way or we can do it the hard way.
Yeah, they just took him out back behind the shed and basically shot him.
What they did with this guy, and I'm no fan of his, and he was a horrible president, the worst president in history. And one of the reasons he was so bad, first of all, the Israeli attack would have never happened. Russia would never have attacked Ukraine, and we'd have no inflation. And we wouldn't have had the Afghanistan mess, if you think of it.
Well,
and we wouldn't have had Afghanistan. But we think of it. You take a few of those events away, and we have a different world. We would also have inflation was caused by oil.
Yeah, no. I think you make an excellent point here, which is that when other countries can, that are thinking about invading or doing bad things, when they're thinking about that, they're thinking about, okay, what's the American president going to do? And do they fear the American president, or is there someone they do not respect and do not fear? And I think they would rightfully be. I mean, look at that the footage of the assassination. They're like, okay, President Trump is like, don't mess with me. I mean, that's but whereas I think people are not going to be, and they obviously have not been at all intimidated by Biden, and they certainly will not be intimidated by Kamala. And you have to really think of that in the context of global security. That if the American president is someone that, like, evil dictators are scared of, that makes a huge difference to the security of the world.
So I had a good relationship with Putin, despite the Russia hoax that lasted for over 2 years. Just a hoax created by Hillary Clinton and Adam Shifty Schiff, some just bad people, just sick people. I know Putin very well. I got along with him very well. He respected me, and it's just one of those things. And we would talk a lot about Ukraine. It was the apple of his eye. But I said, don't ever do it. Don't ever do it. I shut down Nord Stream 2. That was the big oil pipeline, the biggest pipeline in the world going all over Europe. I shut it down. He actually said to me one time, he said, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you as an enemy. I shut down his pipeline, the biggest pipeline. They were looking at that to fund. And this pathetic president gets in there. And the first thing he did, one of the early things he did, is he shut down Keystone XL pipeline, which is our pipeline that would have employed 48,000 people, pipeline workers, shuts it down. That was, a massive job that Obama refused to allow.
Yeah.
I allowed it in my first week because it was jobs and it moved oil. And by the way, in a much more environmentally friendly way. It's underground. It's not a truck that catches on fire or a train that catches on fire. But think of it. He shut down the XL pipeline, the Keystone XL pipeline.
Yeah.
He shuts that down, and he approves the Russian pipeline.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. It's inconsistent. Certainly, but I mean, I think it's just worth emphasizing, to listeners, the immense importance of whether the United States president is intimidating or not intimidating, and how much that matters to global security, because there's some real tough characters out there, and if they don't think the American president is tough, they will do what they want to do.
I know every one of them,
and that puts the whole world in danger.
Elon, I know every one of them, and I know them well. I know Putin. I know President Xi. I know Kim Jong-un of North Korea. I know every one of them. And let me tell you, people will say, "Oh, this is terrible." He said, "I'm not saying anything good or bad. They're at the top of their game. They're tough. They're smart. They're vicious." And they're going to protect their country, whether they love their country. They probably do. It's just a different form of love, but they're going to protect their country. But these are tough people at the top of their game. And when they see a Kamala or when they see Biden, Sleepy Joe, they can't even believe it. They can't believe this happened. All the stuff that you're seeing now, all the horror that you look at Israel, they're all waiting for an attack from Iran. Iran would not be attacking, believe me. When I was there, and I say it with respect, because I think we would have been good with Iran. I don't want to do anything bad to Iran, but they knew not to mess around. Iran was broke because I told China, if you buy from Iran oil, it's all about the oil. That's where the money is. But if you buy oil from Iran, you're not going to do any business with the United States. When I met with President Obama just before entering, it's a sort of a ritual. I said, what's the biggest problem? He said, North Korea. I had that problem worked out very quickly. It was nasty at the beginning with Rocket Man and, all the different things. Yeah. But all of a sudden I got a call.
Those were some epic tweets, by the way.
Yeah, they were. They were epic everything. He said that he has a red button on his desk. I said, I have a red button on my desk too, but my red button is much bigger and my red button works. I got along with him great. We were in no danger. But President Obama thought we were going to end up in a war. A nuclear war with him. And let me tell you, he's got a lot of nuclear stuff, too. Exactly. He's got plenty of nuclear. Russia and China together. And if you're a history student, the first thing you learn is you cannot let Russia and China align. But then they also got, if you take a look, Iran, and they have North Korea. That's, they call it the axis of evil. In the old days, you had the axis of evil. Here we have a modern day axis of evil. These are powerful countries, very heavy nuclear, which is the biggest threat. Yeah. The biggest threat is not global warming, where the ocean's going to rise 1/8 of an inch over the next 400 years. And you'll have more oceanfront property, right? The biggest threat is not that. The biggest threat is nuclear warming. because we have 5 countries now that have significant nuclear power, and we have to not allow anything to happen with stupid people like Biden. You know, Biden did something with Russia. There was no chance of him ever going in. And when I left, and then after I left, they started forming big armies on the border with Ukraine, right? And I looked at that, and I thought he was doing that because Putin's a good negotiator. I thought he was doing that to negotiate. But then Biden started saying such stupid things. For instance, he said that it can be a NATO country. Now, Russia, for as long as there's been NATO, has said we're never going to agree to that. And we go right up front and say that. And we did things and said things through this president with a low IQ, very low IQ. He had a low IQ 30 years ago, by the way, but now he might not even have a IQ at all. There's nothing on the board that goes this low. He said things that were so stupid that war would have been, that war had zero chance of happening if I were there. Zero chance. He was saying everything the opposite. Everything the opposite. And it's so sad because many more people have been killed in Ukraine than you read about. You don't read about how bloody it is and how disastrous. Sure. Hey, look, just in the 2 armies, you lost 500,000 people. But if you think about it, Russia's gone, you know, Russia defeated Germany with us, and they defeated Napoleon. You know, they've been around a long time. They're a big fighting force. Yeah, sure. And it's very unfair. And Ukraine now doesn't have enough men. They're now using young men and very old men to fight. And we're in a very bad position. And I'm not going to blame exclusively, but I can tell you I could have stopped that. And a smart president could have stopped that. It wouldn't have happened.
Looking at the risk of global thermonuclear warfare, it's game over for humanity. And, you know, it's something that people have, I think, after the end of the Cold War, people have become complacent about, but they actually have forgotten that there are currently a lot of nuclear missiles that have targeting parameters for the United States from 100%. Other countries.
And the fact that they can't buy groceries because they don't have enough money to buy groceries. The inflation has killed them. Food prices are up 50, 60, even 100% in some cases. And this stupid administration allowed this to happen. And it's a shame. And that's the thing that people most care about, in my opinion. They care about the border a lot. And we discuss the border at great length. It's nice to have a forum like this where I can discuss something.
Yeah. A lot of people just don't understand where inflation comes from. Inflation comes from government overspending because the checks never bounce when it's written by the government. So if the government spends far more than it brings in, that increases the money supply. And if the money supply increases faster than the rate of goods and services, that's inflation. So really, we need to have we need to reduce our government spending, and we need to re-examine. I think we need like a government efficiency commission to say like, hey, where are we spending money that's sensible? Where is it not sensible? Right. And we need to live within our means. We're currently adding, I think, $1 trillion to the deficit roughly every 100 days. That's right. And you know the interest payments on the national debt have now exceeded the defense budget. It's on the order of $1 trillion.
It's interest,
and it keeps growing.
I rebuilt our military, largely rebuilt our military. Did a great job on it, which was so important. You know, we had jets, we had fighters that were, and bombers that were 70 years old. And we did a great job in that. Gasoline. Now your cars don't require too much gasoline, so you know you have a good, and you do make a great product. I have to say, I have to be honest with you. That doesn't mean everybody should have an electric car, but these are minor details. But your product is incredible. But the gasoline, Elon, is the cost of energy. Not only gasoline, it's the cost of heating your house and cooling your house. That has to come down. It's gone up 100%, 150, and 200%, and that has to come down. When that comes down, and we're going to drill, baby, drill. You know, they stopped drilling, and then they went back to drilling because they went back to the Trump policy. But if they won, the day after they get into office, this country will go out of business because they're going to go to an energy policy that's not sustainable. Wind.
Sure. Well, just going, back to this, like this basic thing, which that people try to make it sound complicated, but it's not. But inflation is caused by government overspending. Right. Would you agree that that we need to take a look at government
Yes.
spending and have perhaps a government efficiency commission that just tries to make the spending sensible and so the country lives within its means, just like a person
The
does.
waste is incredible, and nobody negotiates prices. One of the first documents they asked me to sign, a general walks in, "Sir, would you please sign this document?" And what is it? Air Force One. That's with Boeing, which is basically two planes, two 747s. And the price was
Yeah.
$5.7 billion for two planes. Now,
Wow.
now they're highly sophisticated.
That's insane.
They're even nicer than your plane, okay? But much more sophisticated. They're very, I won't say what's on it, but they got a lot of stuff on it. Anyway, but it's 5.7.
That's a crazy
It's
number.
a crazy number, but I said, I'm not going to pay 5.7. I'm not going to do it. I said, who made the deal? Obama and his people. I said, well, then I know the deal's no good. I'm not going to do it. And over a course of about 4 weeks, by my saying I'm not going to do it, I got the price reduced by $1.6 billion for the exact same plane, other than we had a nicer paint job, if you want to know the truth. But I shaved it by $1.6 billion for the exact same plane. And you can now take that and multiply that out times thousands of other items.
Multiply it by
yeah,
a
the
zillion,
numbers are
and
astronomical. I agree with you.
Well, I mean, I think it would be great to just have a government efficiency commission that takes a look at these things and just ensures that the taxpayer money, the taxpayers' hard-earned money, is spent in a good way. And I'd be happy to help out on such a commission.
I'd love
if
it.
it were formed.
Well, you're the greatest cutter. I mean, I look at what you do. You walk in and you just say, "You want to quit?" They go on strike. I won't mention the name of the company, but they go on strike, and you say, "That's okay. You're all gone."
Yeah,
Isn't it amazing to you as a businessman that they can even survive? Like Illinois, so many people are leaving, and you wonder, how do they survive? I mean, how do they survive? I saw where you left California and you moved to Texas. Texas does a great job. But, I mean, I just wonder, how do these states survive when big businesses, a big oil company just left California, as you know, and they moved to Texas. How do these big states survive when they lose so many businesses and their taxes are already really high? The taxes are among the highest taxes. You almost wonder, how do they continue on? And in many cases, the governors don't do a good job in their crime-ridden places. You wonder, how do they continue to just go on? It's not a good situation.
I think the only thing that's going to force some of these states to change is if they risk bankruptcy and they're not getting bailed out by the federal government.
Right. Well,
that's
you're
the
going
only
to
thing
have
that's going to
that.
get them to change.
You remember the area in California where they had that, where I guess somebody had sticky fingers and they stole a lot of money, and they went into a form of chapter, and it was very nasty for a period of time. But now it's probably the most popular place in all of California. So at some point, something like that may have to happen. But the problem is you can't penalize people that loan money to the state when you have incompetent people like a Pritzker. Look, the family didn't want him in the family business. And then he ends up being governor of Illinois. So, what, is he going to be a great governor? And, you have people, I could name every one of them. I got to know every one of these, and some are very good and some are just horrible.
Well, I think that, the larger point here, too, as you're saying, like a lot of people are concerned about the economy, a lot of people are concerned about inflation, and inflation is effectively a tax on people that save money, and for people that are working day to day, it's just a form of taxation. And if we can solve the government spending problem, we'll solve the inflation problem, which means people will have a better standard of living, and that's a really big deal.
Well, the people that got hurt worst are the people that did it the way they were taught to do it, and we're going to bring those people back and help those people. We've got to get the prices down. When I look at bacon costing 4 or 5 times more than it did a few years ago, when you look at some of the food products in grocery stores, people go, they can't believe it. They used to be able to buy a whole cart, and today, a lot of people just don't have the money. They go in and they can't buy anything. They look at it's sticker shock. They call it sticker shock, right?
I think it really just comes, like I said, I think it just comes down to really, I guess, two things, which is that if you solve government overspending, you solve inflation, which improves the living
Right.
standards of the average person, and then if you deregulate, like have sensible regulations, so because a lot of the regulations are nonsensical and cause the cost to be extreme for no reason, but unless you've got effective deregulation, like Reagan did a great job on deregulation in the 80s, but it's been 40 years since we had anyone really. I mean, during your administration, we made some progress, but I think there's an opportunity to make, I think, radical progress with sensible regulation. And if
Well, Elon,
those two things, yeah.
operating plans, and so you sort of can't get away from it at this moment. I mean, someday you might be able to, but I do hear we have anywhere from 100 to 500 years left. Much of it hasn't even been found yet.
Yeah.
But there are tremendous, like Anwar. I got Anwar in Alaska approved. Ronald Reagan couldn't do it. Nobody could do it. Everybody tried. Nobody could do it. I got it approved. Not only is it big for Alaska, I mean, you talk about economic development, that for the United States, I mean, that is, they say, bigger than Saudi Arabia or the same size, and pure, really good stuff. And, they end it. So I think we have, perhaps hundreds of years left. Nobody really knows. But during that time, something will come around that will be very good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my estimate would be, a little more aggressive than that, but it's not the sort of like we're all going to die in 5 years stuff. That's obviously BS. But I mean, my view is like if you just look at sort of the parts per million that increments every year, you get sort of 2 or 3 parts per million every year of CO2. I mean, I think some of that it's problematic if it accelerates, if you start going from 2 or 3 to say 5, and then there may be some situations where you get just a step change increase in the CO2, and I think we don't want to get too close to 1,000 ppm, because like that's actually makes it uncomfortable to breathe. Like just existing in 1,000 ppm CO2 is uncomfortable. That's like that's considered like an industrial hazard,
right?
Just so it's that's actually, you start getting headaches and stuff. So it's even without global warming, it's not comfortable to live. So you don't want to get too close to that. But I mean, I think we've got. I think we want to just move over, and like, and if I don't know, 50 to 100 years from now, we're I don't know, mostly sustainable. I think that'll probably be okay. So it's not like the house is on fire immediately, but I think it is something we need to move towards. And on balance, it's probably better to move there faster than slower. But like I said, without vilifying the oil and gas industry, and without causing hardship in the short term, I think this can be done. Without people can still have a stake, and they can still drive gasoline cars, and it's okay. It's like, it's not. I don't think we should vilify people for it, but I think we should just generally lean in the direction of sustainability. I actually think solar is going to be a majority of Earth's energy generation in the future, and it's certainly trending that way. And so you get the solar power, combine that with batteries, so because obviously the sun doesn't shine at night, and then you use that to charge the electric cars, and you have a long-term sustainable solution. And that's what Tesla's trying to move things towards, and I think we've made a lot of progress in that regard. But when you look at our cars, we don't believe that environmentalism, that caring about the environment should mean that you have to suffer. So we make sure that our cars are beautiful, that they drive well, that they're fast, they're sexy. I mean, they're cool. In fact, literally, I made this sexy joke: Model S, Model 3, Model X, and Y spells out sexy. It's probably the most expensive joke out there. But I don't know, I like cheesy humor, So, but I'm a big fan of, like, let's have an inspiring future, and let's work towards a better future, and we can do so without demonizing people.
Right. I'm okay. It's very interesting. You use the word global warming, and Today they use the word climate change because, you have some places that go up and so they were getting themselves in a little trouble with the word global warming because not every place is warming. Some places are going the opposite direction. But 5 countries and getting more. China is much less than us right now, but they're going to catch us sooner than people think. They're way lower. Russia and us are number one, and I mean, we're sort of tied. And China is far behind, but they're developing at a level that, you're not surprised to hear very fast. They'll end up catching up, maybe even surpassing. But to me, the biggest problem is not climate change. It's not, and everything's, a problem, but it's degrees. To me, the big problem is the nuclear power. The power of nuclear is so great. You have to, because this is no longer army tanks going back and forth and shooting at each other. This is a level of destruction and power that nobody's ever seen before.
Yeah, and actually, there's the bad side of nuclear, which is a nuclear war, very bad side. But there's also, I think, nuclear electricity generation is underrated.
You're right.
And it's actually, people have this fear of nuclear electricity generation, but it's actually one of the safest forms of electricity generation. It's just a huge misunderstanding. And if you look at the injuries and deaths, caused by, say, I mean, I'm not going to try to pick on coal mining, but just any kind of mining operation. Right. And there's a certain number of injuries and deaths per year. And you compare that to nuclear. Nuclear is actually way better. So it's underrated as an electricity source, and I think it's something that's worth reconsidering. But there's so much regulation that people can't get it done. So that,
maybe they'll have to change the name. The name is it's a rough name. There are some areas like when you see what happened in
good bad branding.
Right, we'll have to rebrand it. We'll have to give it a good name. We'll name it after you or something. No, it has a branding problem. When you see what happened,
it does have a branding problem.
When you see what happened in Japan,
like people were asking me in California, are we worried about like a nuclear cloud coming from Japan? I'm like, no, that's crazy. It's actually not even dangerous in Fukushima. I actually flew there and ate locally grown vegetables on TV to prove it. Hiroshima and Nagasaki were bombed, but now they're like full cities again. So it's really not something that So it's not as scary as people think, basically. But let's see. I mean, are there some other topics we should touch on? Like lawfare. I think we need to be concerned about
what they've done to this country.
Obviously, yeah.
Well, we just won the big case in Florida. One of the top people from the Justice Department went in, ran Manhattan, ran the state. The Letitia James deal was run by a person from the Department of Justice, Biden. They've never done this before, and they set up a very bad precedent. It's called lawfare, warfare. It's a terrible thing and never happened in our country. It does happen in banana republics and third world countries, but it's never happened. And
it's important for the public that may be listening to this to look at Kamala's track record, before the last month, and say, is that a track record you agree with? And I think if you're an independent moderate, you definitely would not agree with it, because it is her behavior has been far left, and we're seeing just an overnight propaganda attempt to rewrite history and make it sound like Kamala's moderate when she in fact is not moderate.
Well, her running mate signed into legislation tampons in boys' bathrooms. Okay, now that's all I have to hear. Tampons in boys' bathrooms. And that means she believes in that too. I mean, she picked this guy because he was the closest to her. A lot of people thought she'd pick sort of the opposite, but she picked an anti-Israel radical left person. But she is far worse, they say, than Bernie Sanders. If we have her as a president, if we have a Democrat at this moment as the president, I don't think our country can survive.
I think it's a massive. I think we're in massive trouble, frankly, with the Kamala administration, and that's my honest opinion. And I think really it's essential that you win for the good of the country for this election. And I'm just stating my opinion. Now, you may have seen this, but I got a letter from the the EU Commission like saying, to not have disinformation on during this discussion that we're having, and there's a lot of attempts to do censorship and to force censorship even on Americans from other countries, and what do you think about that?
Well, I know the European Union very well. They take great advantage of the United States in trade, as you know. We, through a different forum, NATO, we protect them. And yet, if you build a car in the United States, you can't sell it in Europe. You just can't sell it. It's impossible. The same thing with our farmers. Our farmers find it very difficult to do business. We have a deficit with them of $250 billion, which people don't know. It sounds so nice, the European Union, but let me tell you, they're not as tough as China, but they're bad. And I let them know it. And that's probably why they notified you. No, they don't treat our country well. We defend them, with Ukraine. So we're in for 250 billion, and they're in for about 71 billion, and they have the same size. If you add up the European nations that, in terms of an economy, it's about the same size, wouldn't you say, as us? And they're in, and they're in much greater risk. I went in and I said, you got to pay up. If you don't pay up, we're not going to defend you any longer. I took a lot of heat, but you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in. And
I think a lot of the public isn't aware of the fact that the United States pays a disproportionate share of the NATO expenses,
and then we get taken advantage of on trade. So think about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, the point of NATO is defending Europe, and it's it's like, then okay, well, why is the United States paying disproportionately more to defend Europe than Europe? That doesn't make sense. That's unfair, and that is an appropriate thing to address.
Well, when you talk about cost cutting and savings and everything else, I was talking about the difference from the people within and the enemies on the outside. In many cases, the people from within are more dangerous for our country than the Russias and the Chinas. If you have a smart president, you're not going to have a problem with them. You're going to do things.
Yeah.
Now, they've taken advantage of us incredibly, but you're going to do things with the right person.
Yeah, well, I think it's obvious that you're a believer and an advocate of free speech, because during your first term as president, you were attacked relentlessly every day, often very unfairly with false attacks, and you didn't try to shut down the media. You didn't try to inhibit their freedom of speech, and I think that says a lot.
Well, the good thing is that you and I have, and some people, very few, we can get the word out. Although sometimes it's hard because they don't want to print it, like we're having a great conversation right now. Kamala wouldn't have this conversation. She can't because she's not smart. She's not a smart person, by the way. She can't have this conversation. And Biden, we don't even have to talk about it. I mean, he couldn't have this conversation. He would have given up on the first half of a question. He would have walked out. He would have said, "Where am I? Where am I going?" So anyway, but no, he wouldn't have this.
That's true.
Not a lot of people would have this conversation, but we cover a lot of territory. But the beauty is that we can have a conversation, and I'm able to get it out without, because I get treated unfairly.
This is a really big point. You can actually have a conversation with you.
Yeah, it's nice, isn't it?
And you can't have a conversation with Biden or Kamala. It's like it's not possible.
That's true.
So this is like talking to an NPC. No. So it's just impossible.
Well, but think of it. We need a man or person who's unbelievably sharp in order to stop all the nuclear danger and all the dangers that I'm talking about. And I got along with all these. I got along with Kim Jong-un. We had dinner. We had everything. And he really liked me, and I got along with him really well. By the way, he's the absolute boss over there. A lot of people said, "Oh, do you think he really?"
That's for sure.
Let me tell you, I saw things that you don't want to know about. He is the boss. But we had a good relationship, and he doesn't like Biden. He considers him a stupid man. He said he's a stupid man. Well, at least he speaks his mind. But in this country, you're not sort of allowed to say it. But I guess you are. You should be allowed to say it if it's true. But we need smart people, and we need people that have an ability to lead. And she doesn't have that ability. Can you imagine? Now, Chairman Xi very well. Can you imagine her and him negotiating? Or
No, it's
even
silly. It would be
standing
silly.
together, it is, the whole concept
Yeah.
is ridiculous. She is terrible. She's terrible, but she's getting a free ride. I saw a picture of her
Yeah.
on Time Magazine today. She looks like the most beautiful actress ever to live. It was a drawing, and actually,
Yeah.
she looked very much like our great First Lady, Melania. She didn't look,
Yeah.
she didn't look like Camilla. That's right. But of course, she's a beautiful woman, so we'll leave it at that, right?
Yeah, well, maybe like I think part of what people in America want to, people in America want to feel excited and inspired about the future. They want to feel like the
It's
future
true.
is going to be better than the past, and that America is going to do things that are greater than we've done in the past, reach
Right.
new heights that make you proud to be an American, and excited about the future.
They want the American
I think
dream
this,
back. They want the American dream back, more important than anything else. It's like you don't have that today because the people, they've been just sucked. They see incompetent people running our, the Biden thing is very interesting. People just found him to be incompetent. And when I debated him, I was like, is this for real? It was.
Yeah, it was just absurd. But I think there are like some grand projects that we could do. I mean, I think like we could build a base on the moon. We could send American astronauts to Mars. We
Right.
could build high speed connections that are more advanced than anything else in the world between our cities, so people have fast transport. It's possible to solve traffic with tunnels.
That's right.
We already made great progress in Vegas doing that, and and just do things that are exciting and inspiring and make the future feel like it's better than the past.
Well, I saw what you did in
and-
Vegas, and I'll tell you, it was amazing. I got to see. I took a big glimpse at it, and it's incredible. It's incredible, and you could do that all over. You could do that all over. It's deep.
Yeah,
You don't
and
even need much structure. Assuming you're in the right areas.
no, it's straightforward.
It's amazing.
So like I think we could do some things that like China's got incredible high speed rail between its cities, but I think it's actually possible with tunnels if with deregulation with an ability to actually where it's like legal to actually do the tunnels. Then you could have high speed tunnels that are actually better than anything else in the world for high speed transport between cities, and that would be something that Americans can say, wow, okay, we've got something that's cooler than anyone else in the world. That's the kind of thing that makes you proud to be an American.
And much safer than surface trains, where there is a danger there. With people, with crazy people, it's much safer, much better. And it's sad because I've seen some of the greatest trains. I find it fascinating, and I've seen the systems and how they work, and the bullet trains they call them, I guess, and they go unbelievably fast, unbelievably comfortable, with no problems. And we don't have anything like that in this country, not even close. And it doesn't make sense that we don't. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think also like there's I'm kind of hopping on the excess regulation, but I think something that like I think people can generally understand is that what happens with laws and regulations is that there's more and more of them every year, and unless there's a process to clean them up, eventually everything becomes illegal, and that actually it slows down the development of new technologies. I mean, if you take the sort of like I think there's room for some reform at the FDA for improving the speed with which we approve drugs that could help save lives and improve people's lives. And
I worked very hard on that. We got that down to the lowest number ever, and we got therapeutics approved in the FDA that people can't even believe the speed. But I took them on. I don't think they like me too much, but I got things approved. Say that. So it's even more of an honor to have your endorsement. I know how strong you feel about it. But when you think of her, San Francisco, 15 years ago, I had a great friend, Bob Tish. He said it's the greatest city in America, and now it's almost not livable there. And California likewise. And she was involved in the destruction of San Francisco and the destruction of California. And she will be involved in the destruction of our country if people are so unwise as to elect her. And I hope that doesn't happen. And I hope the elections are going to be run honestly. And we're going to turn this country around. We're going to do things and we can do it fairly quickly. and we have to get rid of the criminals that have been, given to us by other countries as they laugh. They laugh at us. They think we're stupid to accept these people. These are radical, stone cold killers in many cases and terrorists. And they're in our country by the hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
And we have to take them out.
Yeah. I mean, if I could summarize it, perhaps, I think these are issues that I think most people in America would agree with, which is that we want safe and clean cities. We want secure borders. We want sensible government spending. We want to restore both the perception and reality of respect in the judicial system. Just stop the lawfare, and I think that's like. And how are those even right-wing positions? I think those are that's just common sense, and that's. I mean, would you agree with that?
100%. I don't understand. The whole. They call it progressive. They don't like the word liberal anymore, but call it liberal or progressive. I don't understand how somebody could say that it's okay for them to empty prisons into our country. And again, I told you their crime rates all over the world are going way down, which makes sense. In fact, the next time what we'll do is if something happens with this election, which would be a horror show, we'll meet the next time in Venezuela because it'll be a far safer place to meet than our country. Okay, so we'll go, you and I will go and we'll have a meeting and dinner in Venezuela because that's what's happening. Their crime rate's coming down and our crime rate's going through the roof. And it's so simple. And you haven't seen anything yet because these people have come into our country and they're just getting acclimated. And they don't know about being politically correct law enforcement or lack of law enforcement. And our police, I have to just end with this. We have great police. We have great law enforcement, but they're not allowed to do their job. They have to be able to do their job without being destroyed.
Well, absolutely. And it's obviously demoralizing if you're a police officer risking your life to arrest violent criminals who could kill you and do kill you sometimes, and then you arrest the violent criminal, and then the DA doesn't prosecute and that's let the guy out. Yeah. Well, then why should a police officer risk their life to arrest a violent felon?
Well, even worse, Elon,
nothing's going to happen.
Even worse, they prosecute the police officer. They go after it and they prosecute the police officer and they take away his pension. They take away his job. He loses his family. He loses his house.
Well, I thought it was very telling, like incredibly telling that, when there was that case where, sort of a gang of thugs beat up police officers. I think it was in Times Square in New York. And then nothing happened to those guys. They were let out, zero bail. And I think a bunch of them were given free tickets to California. Well, what is I mean, that is a gross indignity against the United States, and that's how. I mean, this is insane. Like, have we lost all pride? How can such a thing be allowed to occur?
I've never seen anything. We see where they get shot. It's a very dangerous profession, but it's something they're very proud of, and they want to be able to do their job. But I've seen them get shot. I've seen a lot of things. But I've never seen where these guys are standing in the middle of a big street, everybody watching them, and they're literally boxing, like punching, stand-up fighting a police officer. There were two of them, and you had about six of these guys, and they're punching the hell out of them. And in their own country, they would be dead if they did that. They'd be shot.
Yes.
They would be shot instantly. And, they come from these countries, and it's taking them a while to realize that we don't do that in this country. But in their own country, if they stood on a street and had a fight with a police officer, they would be shot. There's no political correctness. And it's such a sad, it's such a sad thing to see. And that's the reason you have crime, by the way, because we don't do anything about it.
If you can't have violent, repeat violent offenders that are not that don't get incarcerated.
That's right.
Because they will obviously, by definition, continue to hurt people. And I think where part of this comes from is that there's I do sort of consider myself liberal in some ways. I mean, it's just that you want to have empathy for people. Obviously, you want to have empathy for people. I totally agree with that. You want to have empathy, but you also have to have empathy for the victims of the criminals. And if you just have empathy for the criminals, it's actually shallow empathy. It's not real. You're not thinking. You have one layer deep empathy. You got to say, like, what if you don't incarcerate this person? Who are they going to hurt? Who are they might kill someone. They might rape someone. If you don't incarcerate them, you have to have empathy for the victims. And there's a lack of empathy for the victims.
So much more important than me or my life. We're going to save this country. This country is going down. And these people are bad people that we're running against, and they're liars. They make statements. They do things that are so bad. They say they're going to make a strong border. They say they've been great on the border, and they've been the worst in history. They say they're going to stop crime.
Like, the facts speak for themselves.
It's so incredible.
Speak for themselves. Like it's gotten to the point where people just don't even bother reporting crime in a lot of cities because they know nothing is going to happen. That's what I hear anecdotally from people all the time. So it's just my values. I'm just saying to people out there, like the things I think are important for the future is like we've got to have safe cities, we've got to have secure borders, we've got to have sensible spending, and we've got to have deregulation, and so we can have a prosperous future. And then we want to have some exciting, sort of moonshot projects that people can get fired up about, and that's the future I'm looking for. And I'm pro-environment, but I'm not against. I'm not like I don't think we should vilify the oil and gas industry because they're keeping civilization going right now, and but I do think we want to move at a reasonable speed towards a sustainable energy economy. Those are my values, and I think and so I mean that's why I'm supporting you for president.
Well, so. I appreciate it. We're going to give incentive to companies to come into our country, not to leave our country. We're going to be giving tremendous incentives. We want companies to build here, not to build in other locations. And we want to create jobs. And again, it's about the American dream.